Don Jr. was not at Daddy Donald's last night. The prodigal son was being grilled as part of the $250 million case against their business. There he is, tiny soprano. I wonder what's going through his head right now.
I should have worn makeup.
Oh, yeah, good one. Here's the thing about Don Jr. What he lacks in intelligence, he also lacks in charisma.
Donald Trump Jr. seemed to completely unravel after Jimmy Kimmel embarrassed him in front of a national television audience. What began as a few late-night jokes quickly turned into one of the most talked-about feuds between a political figure and a comedy host in recent years. Kimmel repeatedly highlighted Don Jr.'s contradictions, emotional reactions, and controversial social media posts, making him a regular.
I'm at +3, he's at -13. It's nice, but it feels like, considering the fact that I'm not a convicted felon friend of Jeffrey Epstein, and I've never paid off a star or sent a team of masked goons into a park to pull an old lady away from her grandchildren, I feel like my rating should be higher, maybe, than...
The more criticism Donald Trump Jr. faced, the more unpredictable his public behavior seemed to become. Things escalated even further during the release of his book, Triggered, where he accused liberals of being overly sensitive and easily offended. Critics were quick to point out the irony, arguing that few public figures appeared more reactive to criticism than Don Jr. himself. Nearly every joke, headline, or negative comment seemed to spark another social media response. When he appeared on The View to promote the book, the interview quickly turned tense as he clashed with the hosts, pushed back against audience reactions, and appeared visibly frustrated throughout the discussion. Jimmy Kimmel wasted no time turning those moments into comedy, repeatedly highlighting what he saw as the contradiction between Don Jr.'s message about free speech and his apparent frustration with even routine questions. Kimmel continued to hammer home the same point, suggesting that while Don Jr. worked hard to project confidence and toughness, many of his public appearances ended with emotional reactions that only fueled more criticism. The feud intensified again during the fraud trial involving the Trump Organization, where Don Jr. testified.
Making safety last, but fortunately for him, he's got an ardent defender in one Donald J. Jr.
Pete Buttigieg, you saw in the clip earlier, he's taking some personal time because, 19 days isn't enough time. Plus the time he spent chest feeding while we were in the midst of a supply chain crisis and 350 million Americans were depending on him to...
Jimmy Kimmel continued taking aim at Donald Trump Jr., mocking everything from his public appearances and television interviews to his body language and reactions under pressure. One moment that drew particular attention came during a CPAC event, where Don Jr. appeared unusually animated, pacing across the stage and delivering remarks with such intensity that social media quickly exploded with memes, jokes, and commentary. Kimmel wasted no time turning the moment into comedy, joking that Don Jr. looked like someone trying desperately to project confidence while struggling to keep things together behind the scenes. What made the jokes resonate with audiences was that Kimmel wasn't inventing a new narrative. He was simply drawing attention to behavior many viewers had already noticed for themselves. The criticism grew even sharper as Don Jr. became increasingly involved in sharing controversial political content and conspiracy-related claims online. Kimmel used those incidents to broaden his critique beyond Don Jr. personally, arguing that they reflected a larger problem of misinformation in modern politics. In one particularly pointed monologue, Kimmel highlighted what he viewed as a major contradiction. Don Jr. frequently attacked the media for spreading fake news, while at the same time promoting questionable claims and manipulated content on his own platforms. That disconnect became one of the comedian's favorite targets and helped push the feud to an entirely new level.
So embarrassing. He's on the stand, he's testifying in this $250 million fraud trial, and he has to compliment. He said his father is an artist with real estate. Yeah, he's an artist. He's Vincent Van Gogh to jail with real...
Kimmel framed the situation as a perfect example of political hypocrisy, and many viewers felt the criticism landed because it highlighted contradictions they were already seeing for themselves. That is what has made this feud stand out from ordinary celebrity conflicts. It has never been just about comedy or entertainment. It has been about exposing inconsistencies as they happen in real time. Again and again, Don Jr. has found himself facing criticism that seems to grow stronger with every response. Even when he tries to defend himself, the backlash often becomes even bigger. Over the years, he has dismissed Kimmel as irrelevant, accused him of political bias, labeled
Trump Jr., who was in court again this morning. There he is. You hear the protesters chanting, crime family, and that is basically what these people are, a crime family,
While Don Jr. often responds with criticism of his own, Jimmy Kimmel typically answers with a sarcastic joke, a quick punchline, and another monologue that ends up spreading across social media by the following morning. At one point, Don Jr. argued that late-night hosts unfairly target conservatives, but Kimmel pushed back by saying that comedians are not responsible for creating the material. They simply react to it when politicians create the headlines themselves. That remark gained widespread attention because many viewers felt it explained why Don Jr. repeatedly finds himself at the center of viral controversies. Part of what makes this feud so compelling is the contrast between the two personalities involved. Kimmel approaches the conflict as a comedian whose job is to point out contradictions, mock unusual behavior, and challenge public figures through satire. Don Jr., meanwhile, presents himself as a tough political fighter, willing to confront critics head-on. Yet, despite that image, many of his public responses have left him looking defensive, irritated, and visibly frustrated, creating exactly the kind of moments that keep the feud alive and give Kimmel even more material to work with.
Donald Trump Jr., DJ TJ, was in, get that going, all right? Start saying it. Was in regular contact with WikiLeaks during his father's campaign, which might have something to do with why Donald Trump said he loved WikiLeaks more times during the campaign than he said he...
Kimmel has often suggested that the biggest difference between him and Don Jr. is an understanding of timing, public perception, and how media narratives take shape. According to his criticism, Don Jr. frequently reacts emotionally, posts impulsively, and turns relatively small controversies into much larger viral moments without realizing it. In today's media environment, perception can be just as powerful as reality. A single awkward interview can become a meme overnight. One angry social media post can dominate headlines for days, and an uncomfortable public appearance can provide comedians with material for years. Kimmel has repeatedly argued that Don Jr. seems trapped in a cycle where every attempt to defend himself only attracts even more attention and criticism. He has also joked about Don Jr.'s efforts to position himself as a political heir to his father, suggesting that each attempt to strengthen that image often produces the opposite effect. Whether discussing interviews, public confrontations, or courtroom appearances, Kimmel portrays him as someone constantly trying to prove himself while struggling under intense public scrutiny. As a result, many viewers now associate Don Jr. less with political achievements and more with the viral moments that have fueled years of late-night comedy. Kimmel argues that this reflects the power of modern entertainment, where comedy can shape public perception faster than traditional political messaging ever could. Beneath the jokes, however, lies a broader debate about power, privilege, and accountability. Kimmel frequently presents Don Jr. as someone who enjoys the advantages that come with influence, yet portrays himself as a victim whenever criticism arises. Whether audiences agree with that assessment or not, it has become a recurring theme throughout their long-running feud. Every online outburst, complaint about media coverage, or emotional response to criticism...
Oh, Don Jr. doesn't know anything about it. I'm not an accountant. I'm a business guy.
I'm a business guy who had his elbows soldered together, and now...
Kimmel has long argued that exposing public figures does not always require angry debates or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes, he suggests, laughter can be far more powerful. Once millions of people begin laughing at a politician's reactions, excuses, or contradictions, controlling the narrative becomes much more difficult. Critics of Don Jr. believe he has become trapped in that cycle, where every response creates another headline, every denial sparks fresh discussion, and every angry comeback turns into another punchline. Over the years, Kimmel has built some of his most talked about monologues around Don Jr.'s interviews, social media activity, public statements, and courtroom appearances, often relying on Don Jr.'s own words. Kimmel has long argued that exposing public figures does not always require angry debates or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes, he suggests, laughter can be far more powerful. Once millions of people begin laughing at a politician's reactions, excuses, or contradictions, controlling the narrative becomes much more difficult. Critics of Don Jr. believe he has become trapped in that cycle, where every response creates another headline, every denial sparks fresh discussion, and every angry comeback turns into another punchline. Over the years, Kimmel has built some of his most talked about monologues around Don Jr.'s interviews, social media activity, public statements, and courtroom appearances, often relying on Don Jr.'s own words rather than exaggeration. For supporters of the Trump family, these segments are viewed as unfair attacks, while critics see them as examples of hypocrisy being exposed. Regardless of where people stand politically, the attention surrounding the feud has never disappeared. Part of the reason is that the rivalry reflects larger debates about media influence, political power, accountability, and public perception.